She can force herself to have sex with you anyway, but she can't force herself to want it. And it starts to eat him up on the inside. He dies a little more each time. What most marriages need isn't better communication. It's fundamental change, particularly in the man's action. Women are looking for actual strength. Do not try to get your wife to follow you so that you feel like a strong man. Instead, become the strong man that she wants to follow.
Današnji večer poteka v angleškem jeziku, vidva bo govorila. Tukaj gor se bo pa predvajala simultana transkripcija. I can't really wrap my head around the fact that all this is happening. This was just one crazy idea I had last year. So yeah, it feels surreal. It looks like God is doing something here.
Yeah, I'm very much getting the impression that the Lord is moving among young men in this country in a way that I'm excited to see. I'm excited to just come here with an open heart, open eyes, open ears, and see what the Lord is doing in this country.
Cool. First things first. Some of you may heard that Giff is his real first name, but Lasta is not his real last name. And some people say, well, he's talking about frame and all these things, and now he's not holding his own frame because of that, so how do you respond?
Yeah, I was surprised to discover that's such a scandal. So I'll tell the story behind it. I had a book that I really loved. It was Michael O'Brien's The Island of the World. I don't know if any of you know this book. Sorry about that. It was one of my top 5 books, and it's a novel set in Tito's Yugoslavia. And it's the story of God's pursuit of the soul of a man over the course of his life. And his name is Giff Lasta. And so when I started posting on the internet, posting my ideas, I didn't post under my name, I just posted under an internet surname, or an internet handle, and I used the name Lasta. Sorry, let me get some water. Let me get some water here.
Take it back.
You say a prayer for me, Nate.
Yeah. No, I'll let you do it.
So, I was known online, and I became more and more well known writing about these topics as Lasta. And then eventually I wanted to put my face on this. I needed to speak just as myself, to look into the camera. And that was a very frightening thing, especially around 2020, 2021, where cancel culture was really at its height. And the idea was I didn't want to make trouble for my employer. I'm talking about something controversial, about men and women and masculinity. And around that time, people were trying to ruin anyone who would say anything. And so I didn't want to make trouble for my employer. I didn't want to harm my wife's privacy. And so, but yet I wanted to put my face on this thing and look straight and talk into the camera. And so what I decided, since I was already well known as Lasta, I would just take my first name, Giff, and use Lasta as my pen name and surname. But it's interesting the way God's providence works. You know, here I am, and my book and popularity has taken off in Slovenia. And I've made a pen name completely coincidentally about a story set in Tito's Yugoslavia, and particularly about a Catholic man who God has sustained him through great suffering. and I had found that very moving. So here I am. That is that is my name here.
Very interesting story. By the way, what is your faith? You're not Catholic, right?
I'm an Anglican. So in America, I was raised in a sort of an evangelical upbringing. As I grew up, I went to a Pentecostal church, but I went to a Presbyterian high school. And anyone who knows about, the evangelical spectrum, these are on two opposite ends. And so one is very heart-strong and the other is headstrong. And then as I got married and grew to know my wife, we went to an Anglican church and discovered the sacramental worship of the church. And it put the two halves of my soul together. And so that is what we have raised our boys in.
So I've heard you wrote a book.
I did write a book. You read it before it was a book.
I did.
Yeah, that was a wild thing.
Tell us about your book, like in a very short summary.
A summary.
What's the book about?
What is the book about? Well, the book took. Before I made a book, I made a marriage course, and it was actually a course that Nate's took, and so I got to know him through that process. And then the youth group leader of my church, he looked at my marriage course and told me, Giff, my high school boys need this. Not just married guys who have already made all the mistakes, but the boys, before they have a chance to make the mistakes, need this. And so he actually talked me into writing it for him. And then that's the book you read.
Yeah, I read a draft, and then I reached out, probably even before I finished the book, and I asked Giff, would you be interested in having this translated into
Slovenian? And I said, I don't have the book in English yet, right? I'm just one person. I don't know what he's doing. And Nate said to me, he said, oh, just send me the InDesign files and the Photoshop file for the cover. I'll take care of it. And I thought, sure you will. Okay, here you go. And then 3 months later, you came back and you said, oh yes, okay, so my translation team of 4 men are almost finished. My wife, she's the editor, and my friend Igor works in book distribution, and we're getting ready to go. And I'm thinking, what is happening? And here I am.
Yeah.
Less than a year.
Yeah, it's a very interesting story. So what is the program about?
The marriage.
Well, tell us about the book first. What it's about.
The book is about it's about becoming a man with a woman. So, what does it mean to be a man, and what specifically does it mean to be a man when you engage with a woman? So, in some ways, in a shallow way, it's a dating guide, but it is actually much more than that. It's a book of theology. And it's also a bit of a memoir, a testimony of what God has done in my life and taught me.
Okay. What a program?
The Reforged Marriage. Reforged Marriage was another thing where it started because I was trying to coach other men through a program that I had been involved in to quit porn. They were trying to quit porn. And that was a huge part of my journey in really, at age 37, actually becoming a man, putting that behind and really engaging my wife fully as a man. And but what I found that even though young men could quit, married men would be able to quit for a time, and then they would get triggered by sexual rejection with their wives. And then they would relapse. And so I had to explain to these men, okay, what can I give you to help you learn what I learned, how to turn my sexuality and my marriage around. And I found that I was like, well, you need a little bit of this and a little bit of that, but don't read this other part of that because it's all terrible. But this key truth is important. And there were many sources like that. And at a certain point, I had to say, I just need to make something for you because I can't recommend you anything. And so I made the course not because I had ambitions to start this great side business or great course. There was just a need, and I had to do it. So that's how it started.
Okay. And there's probably a lot of wrong advice when it comes to how to overcome that
Yes.
trigger, right? And a lot of people are saying, well, the wives should just do their duty, right?
Right.
And the man will be saved.
Yes. It's all on her. I mean, why can't? How hard is this? It takes 5 minutes of your time. I mean, my gosh. Very easy. No.
So why is that a really bad advice?
Oh, it's terrible. The thing is, I read something. It was Athol Kay who wrote a book that actually I did find very helpful for me, and it was right in the introduction. And he said that actually the man has to fix this problem, not because we want to blame men for everything, but because he's the only one who can. And it's because she cannot force herself by an act of willpower to want to have sex with you. She can force herself to have sex with you anyway, but she can't force herself to want it. And so you will know in your heart of hearts, in that moment together, that she does not want you there. And what that does, you say, oh, well, man doesn't care, right? Over time, he does. And it starts to eat him up on the inside. He dies a little more each time. And so the revelation is that she cannot force herself to desire you, but you can force yourself to become a stronger and better and more inspiring man. And you don't even have to do that for her. You can do that out of the sheer love of life, out of what God has called you to be, out of your love of God. You can do all of that on your own without even caring about her, and it will have this effect on her. So you actually can change things, and you can solve the problem.
Okay. So some people say you are like teaching Christian red pill. Can you explain a bit about what red pill is and how your teaching is different from it?
Yes, that's an interesting thing. So there's a whole thing on the internet called the manosphere, all these secular masculinity movements. And there's a lot of media warning people against this stuff and disparaging it for good reason, right? For good reason. But at the same time, often these people are witnesses to what I call important neglected truths. And then on these secular people, masculinity people on the internet take these important neglected truths about men and women, and they use them to justify terrible behavior. And so what happens is if the church does not themselves champion the truth, then that gives credibility to the people that want to steal the hearts of young men. So that's what happens. And so it's very, very important what is being discovered about men and women in the modern world, that the church own that, because God is the creator of male and female. And this is knowledge that we can use for good and not for evil.
Let's get into some of those truths.
Oh, sure. I mean, the term red pill, and I'm wary of even branding myself like that because of the association with so many things. But at the same time, I have a certain amount of gratitude for some of these people, misguided as they may be. And that is, the red pill is a reference to the movie The Matrix. And the idea is that there's the blue pill that's like, stay with the illusion. And then you take the red pill is accept the uncomfortable truth. And the illusion is that if you're a nice guy, if you're just are nice to her and don't make a big deal and just do all the right things, then she will be attracted to you. And the red pill is that is not actually what women are attracted to in men. Women are looking for actual strength. They're looking for initiative and the desire to actually raise their status in the world and strive for things. And so if you're taking the blue pill and you think just by doing whatever she wants and letting her be your North Star in life and not having a fire for your life by yourself, then you will be deceived. You will lie to yourself. So that's what they said. That was kind of their core message. And that part actually wasn't wrong. It is a corrective.
When you say attracted to, is there a difference between some kind of like biological attraction and what women think they like?
Well, yes, Nate. Yes, there is.
So let's talk about that and clarify.
So there is a sense in which there's the idea of if you ask a woman, okay, what are you looking for in a man? And the sorts of things she will say, like she might say, I want someone who is kind and who is sensitive and who's not afraid to share his feelings. But what a lot of young men, because we are living in an age where young men don't have a lot of guidance from their fathers, from other men in ways that they did in the past, what they don't realize is that the woman is saying, what I really want is a strong man who is confident and driven on what he values and pursues it with all of his heart and is a force to be reckoned with, who nevertheless towards me is kind and understanding and shares his feelings with me. That whole preface was unsaid, right? And that whole preface is part of the journey that she cannot teach you. She can't teach you those things, but a man has to learn those things. And those are the things that in the past he learned from other men.
So let's talk a bit about growing as a man. So you're talking about these concepts of virility and frame in your book. Can you briefly explain those for those who haven't read the book yet? Right.
So virility is the idea that a man has an innate drive for sex and achievement and conquest. Basically, he has part of him that wants to go out and get things. And I link those things. Those are actually linked in a man's drive. The same sort of passion he can use to pursue women is the sort of competitive passion he can use in sports or in any sort of achievement or accomplishment. So that's virility. And then frame is the sense of a man having a sense of mission in his life where he will stick to what he believes is important even in the face of opposition, even when he's being pulled and someone else is trying to use that man as a tool for some other accomplishments that aren't actually part of the man's mission. In Christian terminology, I would translate frame into the idea of fortitude or vocation.
Okay. So did Jesus hold frame?
Jesus was actually phenomenal at holding frame. There's so many examples in the Gospels that don't really make a lot of sense, that seem to be, this is a hard passage in the Gospel. Why is Jesus acting like this way? This man that we know is showing God's love to us. And yet, all of a sudden, he will snap at someone and say something extreme like, if your left hand causes you to sin, cut it off and throw it away. Or who someone comes to him and says, let me follow you, I just need to bury my father. And he says, follow me and let the dead bury their own dead. You see a certain severity to Jesus, and that happens whenever there's a question of whether or not you are to be aligned with his mission. With that, even if you are his closest disciple, if you start to challenge that, then Jesus turns and says, get behind me, Satan. And so that same source of kindness that we all love from Christ takes the form of severity when it's around protecting his sense of vocation and mission. And all of us as men need to be the same. And rather than diluting or reducing our kindness, it gives a platform for that generosity.
So I think, especially after being with some of the people, spending some time, some of the people in your program, there appears to be some kind of a pattern in Christian marriage. So a lot of couples start off really excited, very committed, everybody we're gonna do this, right? And then they start learning that in order to pull it off, right, to actually live well their marriage, they need to work on marriage, right?
Right.
And what I sense is that a lot of people are focused primarily on building connection and peace, but not so much on building attraction and desire in marriage. And what I see happens is that after 5, 10, 15 years, you start to run out of that initial willpower.
Yes.
Because you're not taking care of those latter two things. So how do you see that?
No, I completely agree. I mean, there's some of just marriage counseling or truisms around, well, you just need to work on your communication. That is something that I get really frustrated about, because there's this implicit assumption that words matter more than actions. And that's not true. What most marriages need isn't better communication. It's fundamental change, particularly in the man's action, to establish strong frame around the marriage. And that will let better communication flow after that. But so I think that can be frustrating. And then the idea that what you really need in the home is peace. And particularly this message to women, I think, can be...
Happy wife, happy life.
Happy wife, happy... Well, yeah, that's another one. But like, happy wife, happy life. Just make her happy and everything will be okay. And what men find when they do that, they end up chasing the rainbow. And every time you think you've gotten to it, you go over the next ridge and it's still further off. You're constantly chasing her happiness. But then also when you tell the woman, be nice, curb your tongue, bite your tongue, don't say these things that are critical, you'll stress him out. All those kinds of things. That ultimately, to spark desire, what a man needs to do is show that he has strong frame in the relationship. And as far as those biting comments, those frustrations and criticisms she has, the attitude that actually works well is, bring it on. I want to hear it. No, don't hold back. And if he can do that, and if she can actually get it out, and he's unscathed, then all of a sudden desire starts to grow. Whereas if you come in and say, wait, let me help you, let me give you a bunch of rules, be nice, don't say that, then you find that desire kind of dies down.
Yeah, that's really counterintuitive.
It's counterintuitive. It's against the conventional wisdom, but it happens over and over again with these men. They actually start welcoming the pushback from their wife, but not in a happy wife, happy life sense. They're not going to go against their own conscience ever. But they do want to hear it and consider it carefully. And when they do that, they find all of a sudden the wife starts to relax. And this woman that they said, oh, if you would ever know my wife, she's just not feminine like that. She's not soft. All of a sudden she starts acting like that, and he's shocked to find that.
So what about, I think some topic that is related to this is covert contracts. So what starts happening there?
Well, the covert contract is, in the whole red pill system, right? The idea is the blue pill nice guy who's just trying to go along with the path that the world says he should do, that his primary way of getting what he wants in the world is called a covert contract. And he may not know that he's doing this at all. But what he's ultimately saying is, I'm going to be nice, I'll do whatever you want, I'm not going to rock the boat, and in return, you're going to fulfill my needs. In a marriage especially, in return, you're going to feel sexually attracted to me because I'm a good guy, and you should, right? And then
I deserve it.
And well, obviously, I've done everything for you. I mean, and so he does all these things, and he says, okay, these are all of my responsibilities, and I've done them, check, check, check. And then these, in return, wife, is what you're supposed to do. And here's my signature down here, and I signed it. And here's her signature down here, and I signed that one too. And so you made a contract with you in your head. And then she doesn't fulfill that covert contract, and there's just bitterness that grows, resentment that grows. And it poisons relationships.
So one of the ways I think my marriage profoundly changed was when I started to embark on this concept of total responsibility and
extreme ownership.
Right? There's even a book called that. And I think this concept is really counterintuitive to a lot of people because it feels just wrong, right? We are two adults in marriage. Why would I take on full responsibility, like objective responsibility for everything that is happening in my life, or marriage, or family? So can you walk us through that? Like, why that feels counterintuitive, but still, why does it work?
Yeah, it does feel counterintuitive because a lot of men, especially on the internet, men are really, really worried about being held responsible for things outside their control. And they feel like, okay, I'm just being asked to take on more and more burden, and I get no reward for it. And one of the things that we find with great leaders is that they take ownership of everything that impacts their mission. And it doesn't matter if it isn't, their direct subordinate in the workplace or whatnot. Maybe it is your boss. Maybe they actually have authority over you, but they have something you need in order to execute your mission. Or it's a vendor in a business situation, and all of a sudden you shouldn't be responsible for their internal problems, but for them to get you what you need, you have to. And you don't care. Like, great leaders don't even care if it's not technically their responsibility. They take ownership of everything that impacts what matters to them. And what men find is the more they do that, they're worried that they're going to get roped into being blamed for things. But the more they just say, yeah, blame me. It's on me. You have a problem, come tell me about it. The more that their impact grows. It's actually a gospel logic, right? He who would save his life shall lose it. So he who tries to protect himself from being blamed for anything that isn't his fault finds his sphere of influence gets smaller and smaller. But he who loses his life for my sake, he who says, yes, I'm to blame for everything. I mean, that is what Christ said on the cross. I am to blame for everything. And what did the cross do? It exalted him with more authority over everything. That's what God does in the cross, and that's what God does in the life of a man who takes on ownership of everything in his world.
It's scary, though.
Oh, yeah. Well, and I think both you and I know, like, we know the path, but do we walk it? I mean, we slide back into covert contracts all the time. But it's being vigilant of that and accepting that grace is part of the
Doesn't
process.
this remove something from women? Like, their agency, their moral responsibility. Doesn't this, degrades them to a level of a child?
Right, that's another thing. And so you get criticism from that angle too. I find that it interesting that women, actually much more than I expected, tend to love my book and are attracted to my work. This was a surprise to me. I thought this was stuff you had to write just to men, sort of secretly behind closed doors. It's almost forbidden knowledge because it's offensive. It's offensive to feminism and whatnot. What I find, though, as I understand women more and more deeply, is that there is a part of them, for them to feel romantic desire for a man, they need to feel like they can rest in his frame. And that's different than saying, oh, these are just two partners and they need to have interests in common and a level of commitment to each other. It's a different model. The model is the man is building a strong frame and then she inhabits it, pushes against it, and builds herself and builds everything in that to flourish. And so he ends up being a kind of foundation. And you're right, that does put an order of operations in there. Sing ye heavens, and earth reply. The rain falls from the heavens, the earth soaks in the rain, and then the earth responds by growing fruit. That's what happens to us, like literally sexually. That's how it works. And it ends up being that I find that a lot of women are really relieved by this message because they're intuitively aware that I'm being asked to make bricks without straw. I'm actually being asked to do something that I can't do, and I depend on him as a prerequisite that he's not giving me, and I'm being gaslit about this. And so, yes, it does absolve them of that kind of responsibility that they're not really able to fulfill, but then it gives them the responsibility that, granted, here is the foundation, now build on it as best you can, and flourish, and give all your heart and all your effort. And that they are responsible for.
What about leadership? So this is also related and somewhat controversial topic, because we see often in society leadership is, something valuable, and if you're just a follower, that's not so valuable. So
right.
If we're now saying, okay, men, lead yourself, your wives, and your families, doesn't this again diminishes women?
Right. There's a principle, there's a line that I really like, and that is, he who kneels before God can stand before any man. So there's a spiritual principle in, if you want to be dominant and powerful in the world, you need to be submissive and receptive before God. That there's actually a one-to-one correlation with that resting on him makes you more powerful in your life. And so it is not true that, to be a good leader means you follow no one. You actually need to know how to follow, how to support lots and lots of people in your life. That's true. This is a principle of leadership that applies anywhere. In the case of leadership in marriage, right? I think one of the things that we would say, certainly one of my influence, a guy who had an influence on me, Athol K. Athol, in his case, he wasn't coming from a faith standpoint where he's reading, Ephesians chapter 5 and saying, okay, if you're a woman, if you're a wife, you do this. If you're a husband, you do this. He was simply saying from a pragmatic standpoint that if you're of a completely egalitarian partnership and everything is working great for you relationally and sexually, and it's just sexual fulfillment is flowing like water, blessings on you. Blessings on you. I'm not telling you have to change everything and adhere to this. But if there is pain, if there is a relational rift between you, that consider that masculine leadership from the man might be just what you need. And this is not telling her you have to diminish yourself, you have to hold anything back. It's telling him, try engaging in this way and then see how she feels.
And it's also that it doesn't mean anyone, we're not entitled.
Right, that's a huge difference. Right. We talk about that in the book, right? The difference between leadership and authority. When one of the best lines I know on that is, do not try to get your wife to follow you so that you feel like a strong man. Instead, become the strong man that she wants to follow. That's the difference between leadership and authority. One is trying to stoke your ego and trying to get her to affirm something so that you feel good about yourself, which is fundamentally weak. And that's not how God leads us. God shows us his generosity and strength and is not looking for us to fill any void within him, but he gives to us generously without limit. And it's that kind of leadership that we have to give. So with these sorts of men that we deal with in Reforged Marriage, a lot of times they say, well, how is this going to work? What are you going to tell my wife? What are you going to tell her that she has to do? And my answer to them always is, nothing. I don't have anything to tell your wife. The only person who is going to have any weight, any sway with your wife is you. And if you don't currently now have any influence or impact on her, See what happens when you build yourself up in that way. And does how she feel towards you change?
Okay. Yeah, that was really, really profound for me, because I also, in my experience, often is much easier to just follow, right? My wife, she's a really, really brilliant planner, right?
Mine too.
Yeah,
and very capable.
It's so comfortable to just, let her
whatever
do
you want,
stuff.
honey.
Yeah,
just
whatever you want. And then just not think about it. And if she complains that I'm not helping or something, well, you just tell me what I need to do, right?
Right.
And so it's difficult. It's hard. In a way, I see it as a serving my family, my wife, because sometimes I don't feel maybe even competent. But it's not so much about doing everything. Like, it's not about doing everything. It's about feeling this ownership,
right?
That it's also something I should care about.
Yeah, you take ownership of everything in your world. That doesn't mean you do every task, but it does mean that any of the tasks that she's doing in the home, that you know about it and you care about it. And that actually can be very fulfilling for women, because I think one of the complaints of so many women in modern society is, he doesn't see me. I'm carrying all this mental load and he doesn't even see me. And if there is a sense that you take ownership of everything and you are delegating this to her, and then she's doing things and you're like, well done, thank you so much, this is so valuable to me, that brings the relationship stronger.
So what are some of the misconceptions of what you're saying, what you're writing in the book? How to prevent misunderstanding of what you're saying?
So what's your favorite misunderstanding?
Well, probably it's this about leadership, right? That it means that we have some right, because we are men, deciding stuff for other people.
Right.
And feeling entitled we should be followed.
Yeah, there's the idea that, well, I think I can't lead in my home because she's not following, right? My hands are tied. Until she starts respecting me and following me, what can I do? So, that's a misunderstanding, because nothing that I describe in the book or in the course depends on her agreeing with it or going along or affirming you. It's just, one of the sayings we say is, men can just do things. If you want to do something, you can do it. And then guys will say, well, but what if I do something and she's not happy with it? She doesn't like it. And the answer is, if she doesn't like it, and the reason that she doesn't like it is you didn't see something, you made a mistake, then you need to change what you're doing. But if her not liking it is a genuine disagreement, and in your heart of hearts and in your conscience you believe it's best, then it's okay if sometimes your wife doesn't agree with everything you do. And you're not forcing her to do anything, but you're acting confidently out of your own conscience. There was a guy in Reforged Marriage just a couple weeks ago who had probably the quickest turnaround in his marriage of any man I've ever seen. He went from hopeless, literally thinking, I don't even think my marriage will ever get better. I don't think my wife will ever desire me, and I don't even hold out hope for that. But I do want to stay for the kids, and I want to try to have a better attitude in my life. So I'll take your course. And I listened to him, and I said, I don't think it's quite so hopeless as you think, but I'm glad you want to take it. And he saw in the course of a couple weeks his wife going from constantly nagging him, constantly criticizing him, to absolutely resting in him and bragging about him to her friends and to her mother and everything else. And he's wondering what happened. And it happened largely in a series of events where he started doing things that he believed was right. She started challenging him, and he didn't do two things. He didn't, number one, get angry and pout and complain about her not being supportive. And the other thing he didn't do was, okay, fine, we'll do it your way. He didn't immediately give in either. He listened carefully to her opinions, thought about it, used what was his best judgment, and moved forward. Sometimes she didn't agree with him, and then afterwards she complained, fine, you're just going to do your thing. But what he found out was she did this several times in a row, and it was only over the course of about a week. And then all of a sudden, his wife had a situation where she encountered, I think, some official errand she had to do, and someone in customer support or something was giving her a lot of trouble, and she was really upset. She had a bad day, and she came home. And what did she do with her husband? She threw her arms around him. And he's like, okay, no, I gotcha. And the point was, he no longer acted like just this weak little thing that would sway with anything. He showed her that he actually has a little bit of a backbone. And then when she faced something tough in the world, she felt safe with him. And it happened in about a week or two, and he's not sure what's going on. So,
can you tell us a bit, some more like great stories from people in the program?
I mean, I have tons of stories. I don't know how to draw them all up, but
some with a like teaching moment, right? So,
there was a man. I think he was actually. I think it was an Italian guy. It was another European guy, and he was having an argument with his wife, and I think it was on Christmas Eve, and she was doing some work wiring something in the bathrooms, right? And he said, "Oh, don't mess with that. I'll get to it later. I have to do work now. You know, something might happen." And she was grumpy at him and continued doing it, and it flipped a breaker, and it messed up, and then the lights went out in their house, and it was Christmas Eve. And then she responded by like, see, this is what happens when I need you, and you don't help me, and he's wondering, I told her not to do it, and now she's angry at me. And so he's really frustrated, and he started texting us on the Discord, and the guys actually helped him a lot because he was starting to spiral and get angry with his wife. And we told him, tell her that she's a live wire. Tell her that she's got a short fuse. We're making all of these electricity puns. And he started laughing, and all of a sudden, like all this anger and this weight of, oh, she's blaming me and I don't like it, he was able to just let it go. And just be relaxed. I'm not going to be upset with her. I'm going to continue on my day. So he had the electricians come in, and they fixed it all, and everything was fine, but she was still grumpy. But he said, she can be grumpy at me. I'm fine. And that went on for a couple more hours, and then his wife came over to him and just like clung to him, and he just held her. And he didn't have to do anything. He just needed to not fall apart into either anger or compromise about what he believed. And that was all. And she went through whatever she had to go through, and in the end came to him, and it was like, well, electricity, right? So
that's a good example of a frame test that
yes.
You're also talking about in the book. So can you tell us a bit more like,
why
is this happening?
Right. Well, this is one of these things where I say, if I could get sort of Christian marriage circles to understand one concept, and only one, I would pick, understand the idea of the frame test. And it's the idea that women want to know that their man is something strong that they can lean against. And so that's very confusing to young guys and married guys. It's like, why is this beautiful woman who is sweet and kind and I love, why is she all of a sudden being nasty to me? Why is she poking at me? Why is she giving me a grief and a hard time and being very shrill? And the answer a lot of times, and this is often subconscious, is that she wants to know that she can take all of her like fierce emotions and put them on you, and you don't fall over. You are not threatened by them. And that's the idea of the frame test. And guys who are giving men dating advice will advise you, if a woman you're dating all of a sudden starts poking you, that's actually not a bad sign. She's trying to feel out what kind of man you are and to see whether you get offended or threatened or whether you immediately back down. There was an example in my book, right? The man who was dating this woman I know, and they were driving in the countryside, and he was talking about some architectural feature of the buildings, right? And said, "Oh, that house is a perfect example of what I'm talking about, honey, except that purple trim. It's awful. I hate that." And I don't know why she did this. It was some way that she was wired. She just instinctively looked at him and she said, "You mean you don't like it?" And she looked at him with all this hurt, and then he immediately was like, "Oh, well, maybe that one is okay. Maybe, yeah, okay, I can see why you like that." And then she said, "Well, I can see, you might like it. I actually hate it." And he was like, "Ah." But it's true. She was reflecting on that because I had talked to her about frame testing, and immediately she said, "Well, I don't think I've ever done that with a man." And then she started to think, well, gosh, wait a second. There was this time, why do women do this? And it's because they need to know, part of their biological firmware needs to know, there's going to be a time where I am vulnerable. There's going to be a time, maybe with pregnancy and childcare and nursing, that I need to depend on him, and I need to know that he's not easily flustered. I need to know that if there's something I need and then some pressure hits him from the outside, he's not going to immediately cave. And so all of that gives her feelings of safety. So that is what she's doing in a frame test.
But now there's a conundrum, right? Because in order for my wife to feel attraction to me, right? I need to be this strong man, but I'm not always, at least, strong man, right? So what about when I'm really, really depressed, sad, vulnerable? How should I deal with that and relate with that with my wife?
Right. I mean, I remember certainly in the early part of my marriage, I had this idea that I was a very good husband because no matter how I felt, I always told my wife. We're so close. It was so wonderful. Like I could just, "Oh, I'm struggling with this, and oh, I hate this," and she would listen to me and listen, and she would be, and I didn't understand this. And what I was doing is I was taking all of my cares and putting it on her, and then she's like trying to hold it all up. Well, maybe this is true, and this is true. And the more that happened, the less feminine she could feel. The more she's felt like, okay, this is more like a child that I have to hold up. But you're right, there is a reality that we don't have infinite strength. You know, we have times where we buckle and where our strength starts to give way. And I think that's an important aspect for every man, to have a strong faith in God and to bring all of that to Him. And it's also important for men to have brothers, where they have men that they can trust, who are friends, and they can be very honest with things. And for men to spend time, journaling and processing their own problems, displaying self-leadership. And then having done all of that, then turn to my wife and say, "Honey, I'm having a really hard time. I'm struggling with this, this, and this. And I'm trying to do this, this, and this out of it. But the reality is I'm having a bad day, and so I'm doing what I need to take care of that." And what I found with my wife is that the more I took responsibility for it, the less she was like, "Oh, don't tell me about this," and the more she's like, "Oh, how can I help?" And she was able to change. She was able to shift to actually be more of a support to me in those times, because she knew that I wasn't trying to rest everything about me on her.
Yeah, that is my experience as well. But what about this idea of, at least I think in some circles, there's this idea of mutually compatible woundedness in a couple, right? So that we were actually, our wounds brought us together in some way. And now one of the purposes of the marriage is also that we heal each other. Is that true? Is that false?
Well, I'm sure there's truth to it. I mean, but I definitely think when you have situations like that where you're talking in generic terms about partner A has a wound, partner B has a wound, and they need to get together and engage that woundedness, there will be some general truth to that, but that is not talking about us as man and woman. And if we're talking at that level of male-female dynamics, then there is a reality where the man needs to supply frame and the woman wants to inhabit that frame and build on it. And so if the sort of woundedness that you don't want to bring to your wife is, I'm not a whole man. Can you make me into a man? And that's never been something that women are equipped to do for men. What we say, we have a famous line that we say, right? We say, women are wine tasters, not wine makers, when it comes to masculinity, right? So they have a very good palate for men, but they've never had to become men themselves. So they're not generally good guides to men on how to build the things they like. They're just really good judges to say, oh, yes, what you're doing is good. Or, oh, ick, you don't like that. And so that is our responsibility as men to help ourselves build that frame within ourselves and not put that on them.
It feels almost like there's not just one dimension, right? Either we feel very disconnected or very connected, but there's also another dimension of attraction.
Right.
And it's almost like one being at the expense of the other. Like, how do you see that?
Well, I think there's a sense in which the things that build attraction, the fundamental structure of the relationship, the strength of a man's frame and the generosity with which he holds it and welcomes her into it, that builds a great foundation to then, yes, let's work on our communication. Let's do things together. Let's have all this shared life. If that foundation is in place, then you can do incredible things. And the problem is if you just assume that foundation is unnecessary and you can get by with just communicating more. I think that's the problem that we often run into.
So when I'm talking about the book to some people, some groups, whatever, and I'm sometimes hearing from women that they're almost desperate. Okay, I really want my husband to start, I don't know, leading more or taking more responsibility and all these things, and sometimes they feel powerless. So the question then is, what can I do?
Yeah, and those are can be some of the most heartbreaking messages I get. And I get a lot from women who are feeling very desperate. One of the things that I think the book does do that's helpful is it gives a precise language to communicate what she is lacking, what she needs from him. And I do think that does help. I've had a lot of funny stories about ways in which wives have seen their husbands impact covertly. What I recommend them do if they have a son, certainly, is, well, give this to him and ask him to preview the book for the son. Right? That's actually one of the virtues of the book, that you couldn't do that with a book targeted just for husbands. But if it's targeted towards the son, I actually know a very specific story where a woman bought my book for her nephews. And because she thought they seemed awkward and were interested in girls but not really sure what to do. And she bought the book for them. And they're interested in reading it. And she had completely written her brother off, their father. He said he was on his third marriage, and this one didn't look like it was going very well either. And so she didn't even try to help him, but she was trying to help the boys. And then he saw the boys reading this strange book. Hey, what is this? And they're like, no, don't take it. And he's, well, I need to see what kind of book this is. And he starts looking at it, confiscates the book. And meanwhile, her sister-in-law is like, so what book did you confiscate from the boys? Oh, it's nothing. And he won't. So she's like, what book did you give my sons? They won't tell me about it. My husband won't tell me about it. And they're all upset at each other. And she's just laughing, and her nephews say, hey, our father took a copy of the book. Can you get us another one? And and then a couple weeks goes by, and he gives the book back to the boys. And then she doesn't hear anything except her sister-in-law gave her a gift of chocolates. And so it's like the book started out as a bit of a home wrecker, right? and then led to that. So there's, I don't know, there is some magic that seems to be able to happen across generations. But I do think, as far as a direct answer to that question, I mean, being able to communicate clearly what is lacking is a lot more helpful for women than just general complaining about how she feels.
And being honest about it, not worry about the husband not being able to take it, right?
Well, yes, right. I mean, that's where so many wives are biting their tongues and pulling their punches, and they're being advised, like in Christian circles, that, well, this is being a godly woman. This is being a godly woman, to just push down, your conscience, your heart, your sense of what is right and wrong, and just put a brave face on it, as opposed to speaking the truth, even if it causes disruption. And I don't think that's the right instinct. But it presumes some strength in the men.
So what separates the men who see success in your program from those who don't see it? What do you think?
Well, the first thing is the ones that finish it and do the work do better than the ones who don't. And I don't really understand. I mean, I guess we've all done it, but it seems odd because the program isn't terribly cheap, and so I don't understand why guys sign up and then don't stick with it and do all the work. Because I even offer them a full refund only if they do all the work. If they do all the work and they don't get results, I'll give them their money back. But provided that they actually are engaged and do all the work, the ones who succeed are the ones that fall in love with the feeling of being this man. And that's distinct because they always start with saying, I'm here because I want to fix my sex life. It's not good, it's painful, and whatever it takes to get her attracted to me. And I'll say, okay, well, I'm going to show you what it takes, but at every step, when you do these things, the questions that we ask are, how did it feel to be that guy? Did it feel good to be that guy? And if he starts to say, yes, that felt good regardless of how she responded. And if they can fall in love with being that man, then all of a sudden it's decoupled from how she responds. And she is set free to just be herself. He is set free to follow what he wants with all his heart. And then these two modes of being with the husband and wife end up being the most likely to just magically come together. And so if he catches an appetite for being that guy, that's what makes him succeed.
Is this why your program is primarily oriented towards men who you're saying have dead bedrooms?
Yes, the dead bedroom lead-in is wonderful because guys...
What does that even mean?
Well, okay, technically it means like the official definition of a sexless marriage is less than once a month. So so it's not technically, you never, ever, ever, ever have sex, but if you have it less frequently than once a month, there's a serious problem in the attraction. Of course, there are seasons of our lives, immediately recovering from pregnancy or something like that, but the idea that you can just go year after year like that, that's not actually natural for a man and a woman who are really attracted to each other. And so a man who's in that situation may be gaslighting himself for a long time, saying, oh, well, the sparks fade over time, and it's just natural for it to feel this way.
I'm high libido, and she's low libido.
Yeah. Just see, I have this gene, right? It's called the high libido gene, and I just had the bad luck of marrying a woman who has a low libido gene. It's terrible. Nothing I can do, and I don't believe it. It's like I don't believe it because, at least not in the majority of cases, because I see over and over again, this woman who has no sexual capacity at all of a sudden magically develop one. And so but what I love about that marketing is that's the point that for many men, the pain becomes something they can't ignore. And something beautiful happens when you want something with all of your heart. I've had too much pain. I'm not going to put up with it. I'm not going to take it anymore. I have to do something. And now a man has come alive. He's motivated. And the journey out of a dead bedroom ends up being, to fix that, what do you need to fix a dead bedroom? Everything. And that's wonderful, because you have a path, you've set yourself solving a problem that in order to fix it, threads through every aspect of your life. And that means the journey to fix it will fix everything in your life. It's a powerful journey. And I would call it, I really do think for many of us, it is rightly understood as a journey into manhood. You're kind of going on the inside from being a boy around sexuality to being a man. And
yeah,
it's very fulfilling.
We're discussing and looking how we could bring this program to Slovenia in some way. Still early in discussions, but we'll see.
You let me know how I can help.
Okay. What do you have to say to younger people from the audience? For students, probably not even married yet, maybe not even without a girlfriend. So, what can they take out of all this?
Well, I mean, I wrote the book to them. It was actually out of, a plea from the youth leader in my church, was asking for this book, for this audience. And what I'd like to see for them is for them to fall in love with living life with all their heart. Find out what God has put in your heart and wants you to unleash all your virility towards it. And then particularly pursue that interest, pursue that passion in a way that accepts risk, particularly social risk. So if you love hiking and want to do things outdoors, don't just go on hikes. Try to organize trips where you're leading other people on hikes. Take that risk, and then all of a sudden maybe something goes wrong with the hike, right? And you are now responsible, and you are now to blame, and you learn how to accept that blame, take it on yourself, laugh it off, and then find a good way forward. The more you do that kind of thing, the more full your manhood becomes, and the more attractive you become to the women around you. So that's what I would say. Find the fire God put in you, pursue it with all your heart, and do it in a way that accepts social risk.
Okay. One question would be, we've got one question from the audience, was, one guy wrote, he was going to a men's group. And of course, in the men's group, you share stuff. And his wife wasn't particularly happy with that.
Uh-oh.
Okay, so he decided to honor his wife's concerns and quit the men's group. What kind of advice would you give to him?
Does he believe he should quit the men's group?
Why? Why would you give it?
So there's a big difference between listening to your wife and considering and letting her opinion carry a great deal of weight, and then saying, granted what my wife says, I'm going to consider whether or not it's true, and then I'm going to make the best decision based on what I truly believe. There's a difference between that and, well, I want to go, but my wife says I can't. And you have to understand that you can think, right here, I did this covert contract. Well, even if I want to do something, if my wife doesn't want me to do it, I will not do it. That is my responsibility, sign. And then she will see that I'm a very good guy and be attracted to me and sleep with me, and I'll sign for her, right? That is a covert contract, and they kill attraction over time when you do that. So never betray your conscience. Never sideline your wife's concerns. Listen to them and consider that you can be wrong. But only change your standpoint if you believe you are wrong.
That was actually a real discovery for me, is this concept of being an investigator, right, in my marriage. So instead of taking everything she says at face value, trying to understand more what's behind of what she's saying. You know, sometimes it's about, you hear a complaint, and sometimes I think of it like you have to take it absolutely seriously. At the same time, you have to take it with a huge grain of salt.
Right.
Right. And in terms of, there's probably something to it. There's probably something that needs to be addressed, but it's not entirely clear if it's exactly what she said it should be fixed. So do you agree with that?
Yes. So the way it looks is when you don't want to outsource your decision making to her. You do listen to her, but I guess this is what changes everything. If you know without a shadow of a doubt that you will always make the decision that you believe is best in your conscience, in your heart, and that you're never going to make a decision that you believe is bad just because of pressure. If that is established as the way you run your life, then your wife comes to you and she complains about something and says, well, you shouldn't do this, we should do that. All of a sudden, your defensiveness goes down because you're not under threat of being forced to violate your conscience. You already know you will never violate your conscience. Versus the person who is afraid, oh my goodness, if I don't change her mind, then I will be forced to violate my conscience. No, honey, no, it's this. That's weak. It's the stronger man who has the ability to be more generous and more curious and say, gosh, honey, that doesn't align with what I believe here at all, at least not at face value. Tell me more of why you think that way. And you keep digging. And what you find in the end of it is that even though, in the case where you actually don't change your opinion, even though what she's saying may not be right, she had a good desire underneath it that if you had not dug and taken it on board, you would have been blind to something important. And so always be able to engage with her with curiosity, and you can do that when you have a foundation of strength.
And would you say that sometimes weakness in men is not perceived in the right way, especially in Christian circles? And sometimes it's like, until you're loving, caring, and so forth, if you're weak, it's not a problem, right? So how would you, I think, especially in some of your later tweets, there was some word about that. So.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. So the idea of weakness as, I guess,
so that if I'm a good guy, I'm basically permitted to be weak because that's not
as long as your heart's
sin.
As long as your heart's in the right place.
Yes,
right.
Exactly.
As long as your heart's in the right place. Yeah, the idea, I think the way we often see this in Christian circles is the instinct that inaction is morally neutral, right? And, well, don't get prideful. Don't go off and do that thing that you feel passionate about. That may be a worldly impulse and not a godly impulse. You need to be really, really careful and just
patient.
And patient. And it's as if there is no such thing as a sin of omission, as if there's no such thing as a sin of cowardice, or the man who buries his talent in the ground rather than invests it. And so I do think we need to push back against this idea that passivity and inaction is just morally neutral. It's actually a danger, and it's a sin. There's the sin of acedia is often, I don't know, the sin of sloth or acedia. How does that translate?
Good enough.
So it's the idea that the acedia may not look like laziness. Acedia may look like busyness, where you busy yourself about everything in the world except the thing that takes actual courage, right? And so many of us can do this. And so to realize that that is perhaps one of the most severe moral dangers that men have. And that doesn't mean that we're not called to be careful. It doesn't mean that we just throw our virility at anything and pay no heed to what the consequences are. But passivity is a real spiritual danger.
So I sometimes feel or see men who hear about these things, but they feel so at the beginning, or depressed, or with a low confidence, and so forth. And when they hear these things, it's like, whoa, that's completely unachievable for me. So how to start doing like something that will bring a man towards a strong man worthy of following?
I think one of the things I say when guys come and they've gone from, I don't know there's nothing I could do, and then they read the book or something and they say, now I don't even know where to start. There's so much to do, right? And what I tell them, actually, it's almost cliche, but it's like, if you don't know where to start and you are not physically fit and strong, start there. Learn to give your own body the enough leadership and investment and self-love, sort of self-compassion, to do the activity that will make it strong. I think I will say, to be honest, this is an even more important message for people in my country, in America, than it is for people in Europe. I can just see, I can visibly see this is the case. Y'all are better than us, but it is something that we too easily like write off as vanity, when actually to develop physical strength is a type of leadership. And I tell guys, if you haven't tried this, I can't even tell you how many benefits, both in your attractiveness to women and your just attitude towards life it will have. So that's step one, if you haven't made any progress on that. So that'll take away a little indecision.
Okay. So what would you say to younger women, maybe, again, students or younger women who may be dating but haven't married yet? Like, would you say anything to them in terms of what to, watch out for or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of my message to women, it's funny that
when choosing men, right?
Right.
Or deciding should they date someone or not?
Right. I mean, I think a lot of it is, maybe it's helpful for women to be aware what their instincts are actually saying. I think the book may give them a framework to understand, okay, why do I feel this way? And then they can sort of supplement their instincts with real knowledge, rather than just say...
I'm talking about, about this concept of husband material, right?
Right.
Sometimes that might not be...
Well, certainly, right.
Foundation.
I don't know, I wrote the book because I'm trying to help them, right? Like, it's like there's a certain point where there are men... There's a line in a poem called... I'm trying to remember the name of the poem, but it's a famous poem, and it says, the best lack all conviction, and the worst are filled with passionate intensity. And it's describing this lamentable state, in kind of the end of the age, where all the good people lack all conviction. And it's all the bad people that are filled with passionate intensity. And I think so many women are trapped in that situation where it's like, there's this guy who seems like a nice guy, but I don't feel anything from him. And then there's this bad guy that clearly is going from woman to woman, and he's got his motorcycle, and he's on fire for life, and he's not manipulatable by anyone, but he's also just creating trouble, and he's not going to actually build a strong marriage. And so her head and her heart are torn in two. And most of my message is to the church is my brothers, this should not be. This should not be. God wants us to be both. And if we do that, then we win and the women in our lives win. So other than to tell her the nature of the truth and to encourage her to not settle for anything but what the Lord would have for her, I would say that. But mostly what I'd want to give her is a good man.
Who read the book?
Yeah. He can read another book if it'll tell him these things.
I'm joking because some guys actually are buying books for their sons-in-law.
It's amazing. Yeah. I'm seeing this over and over. This book is for this. Write a note to him. I care so much about him, and I want to give him this book. I saw this on Monday, and I'm seeing it tonight, and it moves me deeply.
Cool. Do you have any closing words for tonight? If there were 3 key messages that you would like this audience to leave with?
I mean, I very much put it out there. I think for the young men, well, for all of the men here, my message is really what I signed in the books. As I was just, these are things I'm having to think the first time as I'm signing books for these events. Is what is my message? How do I distill it? And what I said is that may God stoke the fire that He put in your heart. So there is a fire in you that God put in you, and it's a good thing. It's going to bless the world. Stop seeing your sexual desire, stop seeing your drive, any of those things as just a worldly thing you need to push down. It's something that God wants to refine and use for His glory and His kingdom. Let Him blow that into a fierce flame. And then assure you that if you do that, that you do have what it takes. You may be tempted to say to yourself, I'm worthless. I'm not good enough. I tried it. I've failed. And God only wants you to offer yourself to Him. And even if you do fail, He will accept your offering. And I think that is what grace does, is it takes where we give Him our best and it's not enough. God's grace takes that best and He makes it enough. And so that's kind of the message I would give to men. And then I think to the women, maybe a little bit of relief that, you're not crazy. This thing you're frustrated at, these things you're frustrated in your life, these are things that you sense and that God made you to be aware of, and your role isn't to just bite your tongue and grin and bear it. That He wants to build your man into something that can hear what you have to say and who is not shaken up by them and can hold firm and then can take you into His arms and carry you forward. So that's my message to them, that the truth God has put in your heart is a truth that needs to be spoken with courage.
Thanks, Giff. This was really something.
Thank you very much.